Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming to Ghana. So, did you come to Ghana to vote?
No, I didn't. I missed it by a day deliberately.
Deliberately? Why?
Because I have always said that I didn't like the process. You know, before they did it, I said that it sounded like we're building a house and we wanted to build the roof first. And I didn't think it was the right way. I think all the candidates were fine gentlemen, but I just thought the process was wrong.
Which one of the processes?
I think that would have been better letting the executives go back to renew their mandate from the grassroots of the party. You do your polling station, electoral area, constituency, national elections, so that you have new leaders or re-elected leaders, new or old leaders with renewed mandates. Then they will run a flag bearership race. I don't think that happened. And right now we have a situation where, in effect, we build the roof first. It reminds me of the story of a guy who was interested in a nice young lady, and they went to the father and the grandmother and all that kind of thing. The father said, you know, Maju Trinsa on who already. And after everything ended, the guy goes to sit down and the girl is looking and says, well, they took the drink, let them come and marry you.
Basically, he didn't even wait to be on the same page with the woman first. No,
precisely. I mean, you know, all there, you need to boss her a little bit and all that. Not Nankasa, before you go to the elders, you don't go to the elders and the elders say, yeah. Then.
But what do you say to people who say that you have tried that process for a while? What happens is that there's usually division in the executive level where they can decide to want to. It causes some sort of division. And so they thought that why not? If you pick a flag bearer, all the others will be whipped in line. You don't think that our approach is potent?
No, I don't. And the difference between that system I'm advocating and what we just had is that the leaders who hold those elections have credibility. Unfortunately, and I say that without any animals towards Dr. Bawumia, he won fair and square as far as this thing was concerned, but the process has made his burdens more difficult.
How so?
Because right now you see that people who support him are now urgently talking about unity. Everybody has a duty to unite and all that. The landscape in our politics has changed. Everybody does not have a duty to rally around the candidate necessarily. They have options of rallying around the candidate. And this has been a slow evolution. So now people can do a number of things. First, they can join the NDC like, say, late Omane Boamah and Haruna Idrisu did, openly. Or they can do what Boakye Jakun said, resign in their hearts and go into the voting booths and vote for NDC. There was a time when that would never have happened, but the last time, nearly 1.2 million NPP people voted for the President Mahama. So right now, we're going back to the electorate with the same candidate that those people rejected and say vote for him. And what will be the new message? We saw a 6-month primary in which nobody discussed national issues. There was just personal attacks and I have this and you have that and all that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, what is our party's message for the 2028 election? What did we discuss? What is our issue or our stand on national issues? And talking about Dr. Bawumia personally, right now, is he still the most consequential vice president in our history, or he's the planque nobody listened to? Are we going back to the country with the same message or a new message? And what is the new message? And not only that, one of the biggest issues that has been creeping into the party and has actually become very big is that there is increasing animosity and alienation between the paid voting delegates who think this is just their harvest season that just ended, and the 6 million people who are going to vote for the party. And those 6 million people are saying na mo makoji musika na makoto aba ye na yemeto general election. There is resentment, and all those are things that we could have addressed. And by the way, that kind of resentment is a problem with our general party politics. I think that the fountainhead of corruption in our public space is the political parties. And until we deal with them, Ghana will continue to struggle.
Okay. A few things I want to get an understanding for. I would have thought that internally, a party will debate among themselves candidates who is best to want to carry the party's ideology. Would it have been very feasible if all candidates, all 5 candidates, were discussing national issues?
Absolutely.
Would it resonate with the ideology of the party? How feasible is that?
I don't know that it will resonate with the ideology of the party, but it is where serious, mature democracies do. Because after all, the election that you are going to are about people and the issues that concern them, which of course is part of the reason why no serious political polity think that you should choose your candidate 2.5 to 3 years ahead of an election, because the issues are still developing. Indeed, nobody knows what the key issues in 2028 would be. And of course, the issues also define the candidates. For example, let me give you an example. In Canada, for 3 years, the Conservatives left polling in Canada leading to their elections last year. Then 4 months before, after Trump was elected, he started attacking Canada. So the Canadians said, boy, this man is giving us a lot of trouble, and you Conservatives, you agree with him most of the time. So now we don't like you. They picked Carney, who was unknown to most Canadians 4 months before the election. He had been governor of Bank of Canada and governor of Bank of England, which was a distinction. But the point was that the Canadians were thinking in the moment.
Okay. Okay, and they couldn't carry the candidate that existed years ago to impute it in the moment. They didn't have to take a decision.
Because in that moment, Carney was a more relevant candidate. It is the same way that, for example, when you look at Bill Clinton in 1991, a lot of people were talking about Cuomo and the Six Dwarfs. You know, Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York. He was the big. But by the time 1992 rolled around, because of the issues that were developing, Clinton was relevant and he won. Because elections are about the future. What is happening now, looking at the future.
I mean, if I bring this analogy back home, the people, these 6 million people, just opposing it to those who did the delegates that voted just some days ago.
Yeah.
This system is not new. We've done this system for a while.
Yes.
It definitely has to be a group of people selecting an individual, and the larger population would have to trust the decision of the smaller group who will choose a person and come along. How would the 6 million people, how would they rather have it so that they won't have that animosity?
What they would rather have it, I'll tell you what the 6 million will have it and what I would have it.
Okay.
What the 6 million people will have it is that if you did what I talked about, you would have had new elections at the polling stations, at the constituencies, at the regions, and at the national level. Those new elections would have produced the delegates who then would have picked the flag bearer. You realize that this new delegate pool will have been very different from the one who just voted, because quite a number of these people would have been voted out. So those new delegates would have carried more the current sentiments and inclinations of the 6 million. That is the reason why there is resentment, because the resentment started with the 2024 elections. And the 6 million feel like, oh, these people didn't do this right, they didn't do that right, they didn't. That's okay, it's an argument. They would have had a chance to say, okay, you, Araba, you did a good job, so we're sending you back. Kofi, you, come and sit home. Now, they didn't get that chance to have their say. That is why the resentment is worse than it otherwise would have been.
Okay.
Having said that, let me tell you what I think. I think that, remember I told you a few minutes ago that corruption in our political parties is the root of corruption in our public space. So, for example, the gentleman who just finished this contest, each of them spent conservatively about 100 million Ghana cedis, during this last 6 months for this primary. In the US, what they do is that they don't even need you to be a card-carrying member of a party.
Okay.
If you go and register as a general voter, during your registration, you indicate which party you have allegiance to. You don't need to pay dues or anything. Once you make that allegiance, you are entitled to vote in the primaries of that party. Let's translate that into Ghana. It will mean that all the people in, say, Bantuma and Ablekuma and Bayawaso who registered to vote, they will have indicated that, oh, me, I like NPP or I like NDC. What it will mean is that for your primary, there are almost 80,000 or so people who vote in Bantuma during general elections would have had a right to vote in the primary, whilst the 10,000 or so who vote in Wale Wale will have also voted. The end result is that since all those hundreds of thousands of people who live in Bantuma and Ablekuma and wherever had a chance to vote in the primary, they are more invested in your candidate. It is their candidate.
Yeah.
But under these circumstances, it is not their candidate. Other people chose the candidate and they are imposing it, which is why you hear this constant refrain. Every good party member needs to support our candidate. No, they don't need to. They have a choice. And if getting to election day, they think you have earned their vote, they will vote for you. If you haven't earned their vote, they will stay home or go vote for your opponent.
If we bring it back home a little further and drill it down, same set of candidates that were presented on Saturday.
Yes.
If we had done the approach that you've been advocating for, where we did the executive level of voting, would this have delivered a different verdict?
I don't know, because we never did that. And in politics, you should be very careful about hypotheticals. But I can tell you that if we did it that way and it delivered this same results, I would have enthusiastically embraced it.
You would be sure that regardless,
Precisely.
this is the person.
Because it is a legitimate process.
Okay, okay. But where we are today, what does unity and what does the party, what kind of party did you envisage that you've been advocating? Let's unite. Let's look at the internal politics that's happening even before we go into this primaries. What kind of NPP did you envisage, or were you envisaging before Saturday?
Well, I don't know what kind I was envisaging, but I can tell you the path forward. The path forward is, there are a number of paths. The first one is that taking an optimistic scenario, sitting here a year from now, Dr. Bawumia will have won the trust of the 6 million who felt alienated by the process. And
how?
He will be, well, the how is up to him. Reaching out, talking to stakeholders, making sure the insults go down, respecting talented people in the party. I am kind of a little surprised at how we have devalued talent. Musa Damko and others did polling. 11% of those who voted in this election were illiterates. 15% had just gone to JSS. We need a little more quality in our voters. And not only that, even aside from our voters, our party needs to appreciate talented people. In the old days, we had people like, J.H. Mensah, Don Kofojo and others. Yes, the masses were there, but they knew their place. I tell people the story of Alhaji Jibrin, who he has gone on to meet his makeup. May his soul rest in peace. He was the regional organizer for Central Region. Not educated at all, but very hardworking. And some young men went to see him. They said, Alhaji, you need to contest for the regional secretary. I said, oh, every school that general secretaries enjoy a krache phone. That was the attitude of the party. People knew what talent was. That is why in those days, nobody would have ever gone to sit on TV and insult from Pomwat. The first black man to perform a heart transplant in history, not just in the world or in our era, in history. That's a generational talent. Or to say things about Nyaho Tamakulu, ambassador, great physician, sports administrator. These are not just one generation, that they are multi-generational talents. Heck, the American Revolution was fought by soldiers on the streets. But those soldiers were not the leaders of the revolution. They looked up to Washington and Jefferson and Hamilton. These were seasoned intellectuals. The French Revolution, they look up to Robespierre and what did they call Cardinal Terran. The Russian Revolution happened when Lenin was in exile. They didn't rely on the masses or the people. They waited for Lenin because of his intellect and his energy. For our society and our party to move to where it needs to get to, we need to respect talent.
And that could bite hard, because then if you have to be honest to people who have to take up certain leadership positions or whatever position, a party must be then upfront to say that you don't carry that talent. This other person has that talent.
Absolutely.
Or could it be equal?
Absolutely. And not only that, even we are dishonest not just about the corruption, but about what parties can do for you. For example, I want to break the news gently to all Ghanaians. No party can take care of all foot soldiers. It will never happen.
Okay.
This idea of, all you foot soldiers who are neglected, when we come, we take. No party can take care of all foot soldiers. You support a party not because somebody will put money in your pocket, or they will just give you a scholarship when you don't deserve it, or give you a job you are unqualified for. You support a party because you think its principles will make the society better. So in the US, you vote Republican because maybe you like lower taxes and deregulation. You vote for Democrats because you like affirmative action or whatever it is. So the idea is that you think the principles of the party will make the society better, so you can also benefit. You know, one sad fact I observed, there are a lot of NPP people who were talking about, they said there was corruption and all that, and somebody who shall remain nameless, he says, Doc, people are not against the corruption that happened. They are against the fact that they were not part of it. We can never build the society Nkrumah and others dreamt of, when every person who is following a party thinks, this is my cocoa season. If you don't give me money, I won't vote for you. Or the only thing is, if I come, you come to office and my son is not qualified, you give him a scholarship. Or if I'm not qualified for a job, you give it to me. When we do that, we are undermining our country. But we are not patriots.
If knowing this about political parties, and of course this is not just for the NPP, it would go for all the other parties. Knowing this, why are we calling for unity? Knowing that when a party comes to power for whatever period, there are going to be foot soldiers. There are people who definitely will not be satisfied. And you have just broken the news to us subtly here that no party genuinely can take care of all grassroots members. They cannot. Not even just grassroots, not all party members. They support because of their ideology. What then should the NPP be healing? What then should they be united, knowing this truth? And it's very cyclical.
The task of the NPP is multiple levels. I've told you about reconciling the alienated 6 million who don't get anything from the paid primary voters. That reconciliation is one level. The other thing is what I call a reconciliation with ideas. So whatever the ideas or the philosophy of the party was rejected soundly in 2024 by the public. It's not me. They rejected it. So 2020, what are we going to tell them that is different? That means a reconciliation with what we did that didn't work and what we are going to do new that will work. And then there also need to be what I call a coming to terms with the status of the party and the status of those who are the faces of the party for the public. So, for example, I think that if you go to the United States after 1932, when, say, Hoover lost to FDR, The Republicans sent Hoover into the back room. Nobody will put him on a conference to talk on behalf of the party. 1980 Carter lost. The Democrats never invited him to a public Congress. Why? Because he had become toxic. The public didn't want to hear from him. He was associated with their defeat. Nana Addo has become a public liability. So the idea that when you have a public function, you go and take Nana Addo and come and let him talk means you are not reading the room right. And Hackman also Ajamine is yesterday's man. And I say that not because of their ages. I say that because of their relationship to the public and their ideology. Kufuor is older, but Kufuor is still a relevant face of the party.
How?
People, they like him, they respect him, they think he was a good leader.
So it's not just about being around for a while, it's about what the public perceives about you.
Precisely, what the public perceives about you and whether what you say resonates with them.
But how do we measure the perception of the public? Because sometimes they say certain things are just perceptions. They are not hard, current truth. So they say that, well, if you have 10 people in this room, I'm likely to have few people that will say that Nana Addo was quite a good one. They would also say...
I want to meet them.
You want to meet them, huh?
I want to meet them.
I doubt that it is the whole of the NPP or the whole of Ghana that thinks that he was a bad president.
Oh, it will never be the whole, but I'm just telling you that
on a greater number.
The reason why Bawumia lost had more to do with Nana Addo than with Bawumia.
So how then do we disassociate Dr. Bawumia from Nana Addo then?
That's up to him. If you go and look at my interviews before 2024, I said that if I were Dr. Bawumia, I wouldn't invite Nana Addo to any of my platforms. Not only that, I wouldn't have picked a member of the last cabinet as my running mate. The polling showed that I respect polls. You know, I call Musa Dankwa and talk to him all the time. I followed Larry Gibson when he was here in 2008 to run our campaign. I respect polling. So polling gives you insights into what is it that the public is thinking, and then particularly when you do it with focus groups, so that it helps you design how you can craft your message to the public.
Okay.
So yes, of course Nana Addo will have some admirers, but I'm just saying that across the broad masses of the country and the general feeling is that he didn't run a good government. So for example, right now, he should be defending his record rather than telling people to follow the NPP. He has enough problems of his own. If you media people were doing the right thing and Nana Addo showed up on your set, you should be asking him why he didn't sack Kenufriata, why he didn't do anything, why people were looting our coffers, why he dug a hole in the ground for 100 million, etc., etc. And that should take most of the interview.
What's the consequences of these actions on the decision to keep Dr. Bawumia as flag bearer?
Negative. That is why I say he has a lot of work to do. So for example, I would tell my fellow MPP members that we should keep an open mind. We should be willing to listen to him make his case. We should be willing to, open our hearts to whatever his message is. But I'm saying that at the end of the day, we need to get to where the 1.2 million who went to vote for Mahama and the maybe 1 point something million who stayed at home can say, yes, the last time we didn't do it, but this time, because of X, Y, and Z, we can go with Dr. Bawumia and we feel like we can get somewhere. If we don't do that, then we just spinning our tail.
I know that you say that you don't like hypothesis when it comes to elections, but you understand the pulse and temperature of the NPP in different regimes.
Yes.
This regime that we've just started, the NPP party may have just started. If you look at it, is it possible that he really can send a message and heal and reconcile? If you go back to the past, what has happened in the past?
It is possible. I'm an optimist, and the thing about politics is that elections are always about the future, So I will tell my fellow MPP members, let's not close our minds and our hearts. We should open our hearts. But, of course, there are remedies. Nana Addo set the example that even mandates can be reviewed or revoked. Afoko and Kwabena Japon's mandates were ended because he and whoever was with him decided that it was not in the interest of the party. So it might come to a point where the party might decide that maybe some mandates have to be reviewed and revoked. The other point is also that, of course, if you don't do anything, parties are not immortal. You know, for example, if you go to the United Kingdom, the Liberal Party was the biggest party for a long time. Labour was a very minor party, all up to the time of Herbert Asquith. And the Liberal Party collapsed and is no more. If you come to Ghana, the CPP has disappeared. In the US, the Republican Party replaced another party. So we cannot be smug and comfortable in our space and think that, oh, the NPP will always be there. People don't have an obligation to support a party just because it is there. The younger people who are coming are more open-minded, they are more flexible. That is why NPP people can go and vote for an NDC president. And the reverse, of course, is also true, that if you put together a good package, you can attract NDC people, which is part of why you win elections. So I think the next year is going to be very flexible. I wish Dr. Bawumia well. I hope that people will listen to him. I hope that the insults will stop. I hope that the party will respect geniuses and truly remarkable men whose like we won't see for generations. And when we do all those things, we have a chance.
You say that you believe in polls a lot. Going into Saturday's election, whilst you disagree with the system, did you think that Dr. Bawumia would emerge with the numbers that he emerged with? And how's your assessment of Kennedy and Brian particularly?
Yeah, I knew Bawumia would win because I was looking at the polling. I have, of course, since then listened to people try and interpret the polls. His vote went down. If you go from 62% to 58% in a country where the percentages matter, he took a step back, a bigger electorate and less votes. Brian and Kennedy Japan, I think Kennedy Japan took a step backwards. I think that in the end, 4 years ago, he was the protest candidate, so he was a very good vehicle. I think people have had more of a chance to look at him, and there are a lot of people who admire him, but maybe they think his temperament will be a problem. I first realized he had a problem when a very senior media person, and I don't have his permission to mention his name, but he's a good friend of him. And he told me that Kennedy asked him, he said, so if I was the presidential candidate, would you vote for me? He said, no, I won't. And he said, oh, why? And he said, because I just think your temperament is a problem. He says, I have this nightmare of you going to the UN and somebody saying something bad about Ghana and you forgetting who you are, walking across and giving him a slap or something. So I think that his temperament has become, he has a lot of fine qualities, but in the end, his temperament let him down.
But Doc, Trump is president today.
Yeah, he is. But you see, we live in different, what do they call it, places. And Trump, too, was in effect a protest candidate. But the truth about Trump is that his communication may be off, but people like his delivery. He delivers, you know. He has
That's after the mandate is handed over to him.
Yeah, after the mandate is handed over
why
to
didn't
him.
Why didn't we try Kennedy then, see if you deliver or not?
It's a reasonable point. I think that in a certain sense, you could make that case, you know, that it might be that, and I do a lot of history, so I've seen a lot of candidates people had doubts about coming to office and turn out to be fairly exceptional leaders. For example, you know, FDR, who is considered the greatest president in American history, was considered a pampered daddy's boy. You know, people didn't think he would be even good enough to be a governor. And he went on to be the greatest president. So I do not necessarily think that the fact that Kennedy, for example, doesn't communicate, you know, as nicely as other people do necessarily means that he wouldn't have been a good president. I don't know that.
Okay. You were assessing him and then also Brian.
I think that Brian probably is the person who benefited most from this election. I think that People think he ran a good campaign. They think that he has a future. So he will do well in future. But I think, though, that the thing I take from this is the monetization. I think that in the end, what all of us across the political divide, NPP and NDC, need to do is to demonetize, to democratize, to make more transparent, and to make more inclusive our party processes.
Because you have introduced the conversation of demonetize, shall we just push the conversation a little further to, of course, two people that you have mentioned here, Professor Frimpong Boati and Dr. Nyawo Tamaklo, heading to court, that the courts should look at the possibility of dismantling the delegate system of voting and open it up. For political scientists like Dr. Sasansi, they believe that when it opens the hip of it, it allows more inclusivity and democracy. Do you believe this?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I've made the case, remember earlier, even today, that I think all party members have a right to vote in our primaries. And to the credit of Dr. Nyawo Tamaklo and Professor Frimpong Boati, their original suit included an injunction against the MPP's primary. But they took it out because they felt that that would, in effect, distort the conversation. People would think, oh, there they go again, trying to block what the MPP is trying to do. So they wanted to take that out so they could focus on the central issues. And they have a very strong case, actually. You look at Article 55 of the Constitution, it says that our political parties must operate in a manner consistent with our Constitution. But at other parts, the same Constitution says that all of us are enjoined to fight against corruption. So if we are supposed to fight against corruption and our political parties' processes are openly corrupt, then we have an obligation to do something about it. So, for example, you know, the Constitution talks about, what do they call it, auditing, reporting audits, and those kind of things that the parties don't do. So I think that there is a chance that we need to look at that. For example, when it came to DCE selection, there were DCEs who came to sit on TV and said, I bought my nomination at Jubilee House and I went to the district assembly and paid them too. This is blatantly corrupt. And if we allow these things to happen, we shouldn't be surprised that when people get into office, then they do corrupt things.
Party members have advanced the argument that the NDC tried the opening up of the primaries and allowing everybody to vote. They describe it as very chaotic and it's quite costly as well. And so if you use the delegate system, of course, it's somebody that has delegated their power to that delegate. No matter how much it transfers, people believe it is saving the power, but it's still a representation of the very minute person in the political party. Do you anticipate this chaos that party members are advancing?
I do, but it is being exaggerated. I think that those who are making that case fundamentally don't want to end the delegate system. By the way, in 2010, I was in the room when there was a very big argument about MPP moving to all party members voting, and Alan was one of those pushing it. In the end, due to a compromise brokered by some of us, and Addo shook hands on it and said, next time there's a primary, everybody will vote. You know, I think that one of the ways that you can get around the chaos is, for example, to bring the state in. So I think, for example, that part of our problem is that even in the delegate system, the parties keep the register, you know. So one of the weaknesses of the delegate system is that, for example, just before this vote, Cynthia Mamle Morrison and 200 of her supporters were just disenfranchised. Their names were removed from the voters' register without due process. I think when you bring the state in, because it seems that people who run our political parties seem to think they are private clubs, but they are public institutions. So, for example, if you bring the state in, then when you go and register as a voter and you check which party you prefer, all that will be done by the Electoral Commission. So the state will have taken all the expenditure involved in that of the political parties. Then, of course, when you come to the voting, yes, it will cost some money, but I am going to argue that while that will cost some money, our current system in which people buy the nomination for presidency and others cost us a lot more through corruption at the back end. So it will be cheaper to do what I'm talking about.
You have lived in different level of regimes as this NPP existed when it had its ideology. Before you authored your book and after you authored your book, what are some of the few things that have changed about the NPP as a party? Do you think they're sticking to their ideology, or they keep altering it to at least mirror the aspirations of the party currently?
It's been altered in ways that have made it worse. So the monetization has gotten worse.
But it's across all political parties.
Well, but it's gotten worse. You asked me about the MPP, but I agree with you that monetization has gotten worse. I think inclusivity, ironically, where the delegate system has expanded, has been worse. Because I think that, and this rich is Apoji and Nana Akufo-Addo. This, I can't work with him. We don't me nipa. Kufuor wasn't like that. You know, Kufuor would always say, every party has factions. The duty of the leader is to unite and pacify the factions. So he will say, this faction has gotten this, maybe you need to give that other faction. You know, he understood that. Nana Addo's thing was, if you are not with me, you are against me. You know, there was no middle ground, which is why Afoko and Kwabena Japan will get their mandates terminated. So I think the inclusivity has gotten worse. Then also, I think there's also been a dumbing down of the party. That it used to be, like I said, that there was a quiet meritocracy in the party about who could do what. There was an understood sense that certain people were unqualified to do certain things. All that has broken down, and now there are a few regional chairpersons around and even national executives around who, in my humble opinion, are an insult to our image.
Okay, so should it be modeled back to the past, or it should be modeled thinking about the future?
Both.
Both?
The past as in less vitriol, more, you know, during Addo time when he was running the first time, all 5 or 6 of them were traveling together because everybody was broke. So, but now everybody travels together. And so that kind of...
Did that happen during your time?
No, not during my time.
Okay.
It had changed. That kind of collegiality, you know. So for example, in 1992, I had been outside the country for a long time. But when Addo was in the US, he had been told to call me. He called me. We had a chat for about half an hour. And because we didn't all have money, between, say, 1998 and 2000, the party was so broke that there were 6 of us in the US. Every month we contribute money and bring it down to pay salaries at the national headquarters. You know, so everything was appreciated, and people were genuinely, there was not much dark money. It was sacrificial, honest money that was keeping the party running. I think we've moved away from that, and I think the changes have brought in more of what I call politicopreneurs who invest in our elections with the result that when we come to power, they will get contracts and blah, blah, blah. So those things have made our politics darker and less idealistic.
And still talking about the reforms before we go to running mates as a major conversation, because of course, the moment a flag bearer is elected, the next thing we're looking at is running mates. One of the reforms that sought to cure a policy that was not written in the Constitution, but still exists, is the fact that now the leader of a political party, or the NPP, is the chairman. In the past, correct me if I'm wrong, there was nowhere that it was written that the flag bearer is the leader of the party, but conventionally or traditionally, it's suggested to me like that. But now the new reforms sought to edit it and say that, well, the chairman is the leader of the party. Is this a healthy way for continuity of a party?
I don't know that it's a healthy way. And by the way, the reforms have a big question mark over them because of how they were done. But having said that, I think that even though we always say the chairman is the leader of the party, it is theoretical. In practice, a sitting president would always be the leader of the party.
Is that ideal?
Because I don't know that it is ideal, but I'm just saying because the US, they are so obvious that when the president becomes president, the party chairman resigns so he can pick the party chairman. You know, the reason is that influence in parties is tied to resources, you know, and a president controls more resources. You know, the parties have had a tradition of the general secretary and the chairman sitting in the cabinet, who are supposed to be leaders of the party. But a lot of them have become so sycophantic that nobody hears of them there. And the reason is that the president has 8,000, you know, appointments to give. He can give contracts, he can do this. So for practical purposes, he becomes the de facto leader of the party, regardless of what is on paper. You know, so I think that, you know, sometimes you can get too theoretical. You just hope that the president is a good man who knows the limits of power and the ends of power. You know, by the way, what do they call it? Nehru was so altruistic that he used to berate his party members for agreeing to everything.
Which Nehru is this?
India.
Okay.
Nehru. You know, so that is the first prime minister of India. Okay. You know, he was very worried about undue accumulation of power in the hands of only one person. You know, but it is ultimately the willingness of people to stand up to the powerful, you know, whether it is in a party or in a country. I think that that is part of hero worshipping and sycophancy is why very respected priests would agree to a hole in the ground costing Ghana 100 million when children were learning under trees. You know, there's no way. I mean, I think I venerate Cardinal Turkson, but even if Cardinal Turkson walked up to me and said, Arthur, I just talked to God, and he says it was the right thing to do, I would say, this one I want to ask God myself. I want to ask God myself, you know.
As a party, I mean, it's been just a few days since they selected the flag bearer. Should he keep the running mates he selected in the previous contest?
I wouldn't. And actually, you know, I have had occasion to address it for a number of reasons. The first is that one of the biggest problems the NPP has from the 2024 elections is an image problem. People think the last government didn't do well, which is why we lost that election. So whenever you go to the public again, either with the same ideas or the same people, and you know that people are policy and people are a message, you are telling them that we want to do the same things we did again. So I think it helps to give them new faces and new ideas. So having said that, which is part of why I think Dr. Bawumia himself has a problem, but I think he doubles down on his problem when he picks somebody else who was also a very familiar face of the last government. So that's my first point. The second one is that I don't think, and I like Napo, he's a very, you know, interesting person. I don't think he was a good running mate. Of course, you can always say maybe this time around he will be better, but the last time his Mokwam and Kromano and all those kind of things just were alienating. So if I were Dr. Bawumia, I would seriously consider whether other people would help me better.
Do they have the luxury of trying another person?
Why don't they have
would they have the luxury? Because then, of course, they wouldn't know that they wouldn't know that Napo would have done a few of the things that the party said they didn't like. If they have to now consider somebody else, do they have the luxury of testing another person? And I ask this because of continuity in your party, in the NPP, not for a vice presidential candidate, but I noticed the trend that there's some sort of tradition of continuity. A person likes to come back again, and they get the opportunity. Would you transfer that same to a vice presidential candidate?
I wouldn't. Actually, I think the so-called tradition of going back again and again, I think the times may have passed us by. You know, there used to be loyalty to parties. People will go and vote for them. These days, they showed us in 2024 that they are willing to vote for the candidate of the other party. In 1996, no true blue MPP person will ever have thought of voting for Rawlings. You know, but now the younger people are more open-minded. They will do that. So I'm just saying that transferring that same tradition is not necessarily a good idea. And not only that, you know, sometimes we make a hash of things that ought to be very simple. There are people you can look at, you know, whose temperament and knowledge and others, it's low risk. You know, they will be good running mates or presidential candidates. So I think that if I were him, I would at least reflect on whether doing the same thing will give me different results.
Okay. Away from the NPP, let's spend some of the few minutes we have on the current government. What's your general assessment of the president, first of all, before his governance?
Very accessible, very affable, very good communicator. So the president is doing well. My one criticism of the president, though, is that I think he's spread too thin. You know, good speeches about almost everything, but the follow-through is not there. And for example, if he asks me, and I might talk to him if he's available. If he asks me, I will say that the day after you leave office, you know, if you ask me to judge you, I will say, what did he do on Galamsey? What did he do on the economy? What did he do on the corruption? What did he do on the diaspora? How many jobs did he create? It's about 5 things.
These 5 things so far in the 1 year and few months that he's been in power, how would you score him? On Galamsey, maybe we start.
I think Galamsey, I'll give him an incomplete. I think that he's trying, but I haven't seen the results yet. And I have had occasion to vigorously exchange views with him, so I know he means well and he's trying, but at the end of the day, governance is about results. So I would say incomplete. He's trying, but I haven't seen the results.
In the first year, the incomplete, so it means that by the time he's exiting, you'd have gone back to take stock to see how Galamsey
absolutely. If I'll tell him, if he was sitting in front of me, if he leaves office and Galamsey hasn't been solved, it will be very hard to call him a successful president.
Okay, and the economy?
The economy, I think that I'll give him a B at this time. Okay. The reason why he's not getting an A is that I think there is a lot of promise, but things haven't been delivered. I want to see jobs on the ground. I want to see the role of the diaspora. I want to see people on the streets doing well. I think that the economy is doing well according to macroeconomic indicators, the IMF and those things, but I want to know that people in the streets are doing well. So those people in the streets that I talk about, I haven't heard of them first. I saw the new economic team that he announced. They are very familiar names. I think we need to bring new thinking into the way we do things. You know, younger economists like Achu Amegashi, Yawen Sakon, social developers like that, you know, so that we bring some fresh thinking. So the old people are good, but we need to freshen the team and the advice. And when they give him advice, he should take it.
The way the governance and his governance is going in this first year in totality, I mean, I see that you have to compute. It has to be a continuous assessment to have a full score, right?
Yeah.
But he's got some incomplete, he's got a B. But But if things remain like this, how easy or difficult would it be for NPP to wrestle power in 2028? Would it be a completely different table?
It will be difficult because remember I told you about polling. Polling is a very interesting thing. That I, for example, you know, looking at Mohammed's first term, you know, terminal, a lot of infrastructure, that he did quite a few things, you know, but the perception of the public, mainly driven by corruption, was that he had not done well. So it is possible to run a very good government and for the public to disapprove of the government you have run. It's also possible to run a bad government and if you have a very good communication team, to be perceived in the right sense. So if things go as they are going now, the NDC has a good chance because the public has a good perception of it. That doesn't mean objective policy wonks like me will feel the same way. Having said that, the other side of the coin is also the NPP. Where people say that incumbent governments lose elections, opposition parties don't win. But of course, the opposition parties must put themselves in a position where they are attractive to the public. The question is whether, even if the NDC is faltering a little bit, the NPP can position itself to be attractive enough for the public to give it a look.
Doc, it's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. The time just came so quickly, but thank you so much, and I wish you the best, and enjoy your stay in Ghana.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
Thank you. Dr. Arthur Kobina is Kennedy is a physician and a politician as well. Please stay. We'll be back shortly to wrap up the show.
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.